In the world of computing, we have a term called best practices. And if you don't know what you don't know, there may be some things that you need to do that you aren't doing. Today, I'm going to share with you 19 of my favorite PC and Windows best practices. Some of them you might know, some of them you might not. These are in no particular order. Some of these are for being safer online. Some are used for protecting yourself in case of a Windows problem. Some are strictly for your sanity. And some are just good to know. Number one on the list is a term and a phrase that I've been using for 30 years, and anybody who's in IT knows. Save now, save often. This is usually most applicable when you are working in a Word document. For example, if you're typing up a term paper or sending an email or anything that you have put a lot of effort into putting into a digital document. So many people spend a ton of time typing and writing it out in exactly the way they want, and they never think to save it. And then what will happen is if Windows updates suddenly restart your computer, or you have a power outage, you can't get that document back. It's gone. It's gone forever. You have to start all over from scratch. We have an expression in the industry that Control-S is your friend. And that's because Control-S in most programs is the save option. Save now, save often, Control-S is your friend. If you start typing on something, even if you go 2 or 3 more paragraphs, go ahead and just hit Control-S to save your most recent work. And then if something happens, it's no big deal. You've got it saved. I promise you, it's a great habit to get into. And eventually, you'll just do it without even thinking about it. Number 2 on the list is what you would think that most people would instinctively know, but they don't. And that's to use an antivirus program. A lot of people don't understand that the internet is just a dangerous place. And I've seen too many times where someone has an antivirus program that has expired and no longer protecting them. Now, if you have a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 system and you are what most people would consider a novice or average Windows user, Microsoft Defender that comes with Windows is going to probably be plenty for you. There are other options. There's free antivirus programs and there's paid antivirus programs, and you need to do the research to see which one works best for you. But being on the internet without an antivirus program is just a bad idea. Number 3 on the list is stay organized. I know for a lot of people this probably isn't even a thing, but what will happen is over time, when you have pictures scattered in your documents folder and you have downloads and a billion other files, over time we all download files and have PDFs here and pictures here and movies here and documents here, and eventually when all that stuff stays scattered everywhere, it's hard to keep up with it. For your mental sanity, a lot of times it's really smart to actually put your documents in your documents folder and your pictures in your pictures folder and so on. I know that probably seems rather basic and rather silly, but I promise you over time it will get overwhelming. And then what will happen is you'll have 80,000 pictures scattered all over your computer. And when you go to look for something, you just pull your hair out and you give up. Make a point to stay organized. Put your documents where they go, put your pictures where they go, and when you need something, you can go straight to it. This will go a long way to make sure that the time you spend in front of your computer is healthy time. Your sanity will thank you. Number 4 on the list is use a VPN if you're on the internet. So what is a VPN anyway? Well, VPN actually stands for Virtual Private Network. And basically what it does is it encrypts your traffic from your computer out to the internet. And it basically hides your identity from anybody who might want to cause harm to you or steal your identity. Now, as far as recommendations go, I would actually highly recommend NordVPN, which is actually today's sponsor. But they're not just a sponsor of this video. They're actually really good. I've used them for years. Using an encrypted VPN like Nord will actually help prevent third parties who might want to spy on you. In today's world, everybody's so concerned about privacy and data collection and all these things, and that's where a service like NordVPN can really come in handy. Here's some of the benefits of using a VPN service like Nord. With one click, you're going to be anonymous and hide your true identity on the internet. Not even your internet provider is going to be able to know what you're doing at any time. They can't see the traffic because it's encrypted and hidden. Just a couple of the features that I really love is NordVPN has built-in threat protection to help prevent malware and viruses from getting on your machine, and it also has a dark web monitor which alerts you immediately if your email or identity appears somewhere on the dark web. And if you know anything about the dark web, that's where it all happens. That's where your information, your identity, your credit card information, all that stuff gets stored and sold to some random third party. Nord simply prevents that with one click. They've got round-the-clock 24/7 customer service, and they give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you try it and you don't like it, just cancel. So here's some examples of how a VPN can actually protect you. Now, there's a lot of websites out there that ask for your personal information, and a lot of times people just do that and don't think about it. But if it's not a secure connection between you and that website, a bad guy could intercept your data and then turn around and use it to steal your identity. If you're protected with a VPN, that doesn't happen. Another great reason to use a VPN is, say you're in a country on business and you want to watch one of your favorite streaming services. And unfortunately, maybe that country's internet does not allow for streaming from the United States. Well, if you have a VPN, you can simply point it to a US server, tell it you are in the United States, and suddenly everything works and you can continue watching your favorite programs thousands of miles away from home. And did you know that many governments, not just in the United States, have arrangements with local internet providers to hand over any data from their customers at any time? Yeah, it happens, and quite a bit. But if you have a VPN service like Nord, you can prevent what the government sees because your internet provider can't even see what you're doing. And if the internet provider can't see what you're doing, then there's nothing for them to hand over. Just another way to stay protected from Big Brother watching you all the time. Now, I won't go on and on about this. It's just absolutely a fantastic idea, and NordVPN is a business and company that I have trusted for many, many years. If you use the link in the description, you're going to get 4 months of free NordVPN to try out for yourself, plus a special coupon for your friends and family. And again, try it. If you don't like it, cancel it. No big deal. But I highly recommend it. If you go with a VPN service, NordVPN is the one I would absolutely recommend. Now, number 5 on the list is something that one would think that everybody has figured out already, and I see every day that people don't. And that is opening suspicious emails or clicking links in emails from people you may or may not know. Email phishing attacks are one of the newest and most common ways now to get malware embedded on your computer. You can get an email from somebody that's in your contact list and you think it's actually from them, but it's not, because that person's computer may be infected and replicating a malware infection or a virus out through their contacts. So just because it looks legitimate doesn't mean it is. And even if it comes from someone that you know and you communicate with, if they send you something unusual, shoot them a text message. Ask them, did you send this to me? Because this is not the kind of stuff you normally send. As a good rule of thumb, you should probably never click a link in an email to begin with unless you're absolutely expecting that already. And if you're not sure whether a message is legitimate or not, it's always best to delete it. And that way you avoid possibly infecting your own computer. You know, along the lines of email phishing scams and potentially malicious or infected emails, one of the ways that people get tricked into getting bad stuff on their computer is by going to websites that look legitimate, but they're actually not. Just about anybody nowadays can create a website that looks 100% legitimate. So my recommendation for best practices when surfing the internet is, if you're not exactly sure where you're at, there's a couple things you can do. One, I would definitely recommend looking at the domain name in your web browser at the very top. So for example, if you think you're going to the Adobe website and you look at the domain name and it doesn't have Adobe anywhere in it, chances are it's not legitimate. In those cases, the best thing that you can do is actually just open your browser and type in adobe.com, and then you'll at least know you're going to the correct website. Too many people get infected by looking at a website thinking it is something familiar. I see that all the time with Facebook specifically, and it's super easy to duplicate Facebook, I mean to the letter, to where everything looks exactly like Facebook. But what you're doing is, when you type in an email and a password and it doesn't let you in, and you keep trying and then you click on the forgot password link, what you're actually doing is transmitting your email address and the password you want to a third party. And then guess what? That third party then takes your information, logs into your Facebook, and locks you out. Ever had that happen before? I see a lot of people every day who say that their Facebook got hacked. This is how it happens. So be mindful of what you click on. If you are searching Google for a particular medicine, don't just automatically click on the first title that looks appealing. Look at the domain name. Look and see if it's something familiar to you. For example, WebMD or Rx.com or drugs.com, FDA.com, names that you know and trust. And then when you click on those links, you'll know that you have a much better chance of actually getting to a safe website. Anybody can duplicate any website, and you have to be mindful of that. The next best practice is probably something you hardly ever give a thought to, but keeping your computer clean is important to the longevity of your computer. If you've got a laptop that has exhaust ports that are clogged or dirty from pet hair or anything floating around the air, that stuff can get inside the computer and clog up the fan. And when your fan gets clogged up, it doesn't turn efficiently. And when it doesn't turn efficiently, your computer overheats. Same with the desktop. You always want to make sure that you clean it out as best you can. Now, the best way to do that is either use a can of compressed air where you can stick the nozzle into the exhaust ports with the computer off and just spray it out real good. You'd be surprised how much stuff gets out of that computer. Or get something like this, which is a rechargeable air duster, and it certainly ends up becoming way less expensive than one of these. I'll put the link for this in the description if you want to check it out. This is one of my favorite toys, and when you use it, it will absolutely help keep your computer clean. When you have a clean computer, you have a longer lasting computer. And it's something people don't think about, but you absolutely should. Believe it or not, one of the things that you would think everybody does, but a lot of people don't, is backing up your files. In today's world, with Windows being sometimes pretty unpredictable, backing up your personal information is critical. If you don't have a backup copy of your important data, if something were to happen to Windows, you're going to totally lose everything you have. Now, I'm not going to go in depth on how to do that here. I did make a dedicated video on how to do a proper backup, and I'll link that up in the card in the corner for you. But just be aware that if you aren't backing up your files, you are risking losing anything that matters to you. And if you're not sure whether you need to back up or not, just picture for a second losing everything on your computer, and how would that make you feel? If it makes you sick to your stomach, then make sure you back up. Next on the list is to create an administrator account on your computer that is just there for security. And the account that you use for everyday usage is a standard account. Now, you ask, well, what's the difference? Well, a standard account is very limited on what they can do. They can't make a lot of system changes. They can't do registry edits. They can't install software. They can't do anything without elevated permissions from an account that has administrator privileges. Now, you would think, well, that's kind of weird, but why would I need that? So think about it this way. If malware were to somehow try to find its way onto your computer and install itself, if you were logged in using a standard account, that malware can't install itself onto that account, thereby not installing on your PC. On the other hand, if it's a program that you legitimately want to install, then what will happen is when you try to install it, you will get prompted to type an administrator password. At that point, you can type in that secret administrator password that nobody uses, and then whatever you wanted to do, you'll be able to continue to do that. This is just a really good idea for ongoing security and to make sure that you don't accidentally install something on your computer that you didn't mean to. So let me show you how to do this real quick. This is super easy. So all you have to do is just go into your settings, and then you're going to go into accounts. Now, as you can see here, I'm not following my own best practices, and I'll probably get punished for that one day, but this is what you would want to do. This regular account here should be a standard account as opposed to administrator. If you go down here to family and other users, you can click add someone else to this PC. When you get this prompt, click I don't have this person's sign-in information, and then click add a user without a Microsoft account. You can name it whatever you want. This is just going to be an administrator. I'm going to say ain't going to get me. Then you must put a password on it for this to work. So just put a password and make sure that this is a password you won't forget. Once you go through all that, now you're going to see here that you have a new local account, but it's not an administrator account. This new account is going to be an admin account that is going to work to effectively keep malware off your machine. So you click change account type, and then from standard user to administrator. Okay, so just so you understand, I had to log out of my regular account because you can't make changes to the account you're actively working in. So I'm going to go back into settings and go to family and other users. Now this is the one that I just showed you how to create. This is an administrator account. This is the one that I normally use right here. I'm going to go change the account type from administrator to a standard user. Click OK, but in order to effectively make those changes, I have to log off and log back in. So let me show you why doing this is important. Say for example, you accidentally clicked on a link somewhere and it tried to install a program, like this one for example. Then download will run, and as soon as you try to open the file and click run, you're going to get prompted for an administrator password. And if you don't type in that password, that thing cannot run. So what exactly is this sorcery and why is it necessary? Well, just think about it. If something were to try to get on your computer, you are basically adding an extra security layer by forcing any type of program or malware to run with administrator privileges. If you yourself are not running with administrator privileges, then you automatically make your computer safer. Now, the upside is that unlike the malware, you know the administrator password. So is it inconvenient? Yeah, sure. But it's one extra thing that you have to do, one extra password you have to type that could potentially keep you out of the PC repair shop. Now, if you remember earlier, we talked about email phishing scams and spam emails and things like that. One way that that actually happens to you, even if you have a new email account, is if you end up putting your email address on a public website or a message board or a forum or something like that. Now, this is different than submitting a form that is usually secured. You can always check and see if it's secure by looking and see if there's a lock next to the URL in the top of your browser. But too many people just end up putting their email address in some board somewhere. So what happens is there are bots that scour the internet looking for anything at anything.com. And then what they do is they collect these addresses and then they just spam the crap out of you. If you're submitting something via a form, like for a warranty or something along those lines, if it's secure, which again, just check again to see if it's got HTTPS and it has a lock, then that's okay because that's being sent privately, but it's not sitting out there in the public domain where anybody can copy it and email you. That is one great way to cut down on the amount of spam that you may get. So the next best practice that I want to talk to you about is something that a lot of people do and they don't think about it, but they wonder how their accounts get hacked and things like that, is password security. And I'm going to pick on my wife for just a second here, but she's actually done it the correct way. She has an envelope full of sticky notes with usernames and passwords to pretty much any website ever. Now, granted, while that's a little tough to keep up with, the fact of the matter is, if it's not online or not on your computer, it can't be stolen. That is absolutely probably the best way to store your passwords for free and make sure that nobody ever gets a hold of them. But ironically, while filming this segment of the video, I had to go find this envelope. And I went back and forth with her for about half an hour trying to figure out where in the world this envelope was. So that's always a possibility that if you keep everything in paper format, that's great until you lose it. And then you've lost everything. The other recommendation that I would make is maybe use a third-party password manager. Basically, the way that that works is instead of storing your passwords in your browser, which can be hijacked, what you do is you use a third-party program, and there's a ton of them out there, and I'm going to make a video about one in particular coming up. But what you do is you have one master password, and then your passwords for all the different websites are not only stored inside this locked vault, but also it gives you the opportunity to create extremely random passwords as well. And I also made a video a while back about how to create a super secure password. I'll link to that in the card above or in the video description. Definitely check that out. But password security is absolutely a best practice that you should follow. Next on the list is probably a subject that nobody wants to talk about, and that is updating your software. Now, a lot of you have experienced issues with Windows updates, and I've even made videos on how to disable Windows updates. The truth of the matter is that even though the majority of these updates aren't super critical, sometimes there are security patches that are released from Microsoft that actually patch known vulnerabilities on your Windows PC. And those known vulnerabilities can hurt you if you go to the wrong website. Now, this doesn't just apply to Windows updates too. And I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody else when it comes to my current drivers or software updates. For the most part, if everything's working, I pretty much just leave it alone. But the reality is when you get notified that there is a new software update available, actually look through it and see what it patches. If any of these are related to security in any way, whether it's Windows or your Adobe software or your third-party program that does whatever, every program eventually has a vulnerability. And when they're discovered, these companies release these software updates for a reason. And the last thing you want to do is find yourself comfortable with an older version of software that has got a vulnerability, and then suddenly you go to the wrong website, and next thing you know, you lose complete control of your computer. That would be bad. So the best practices in this situation is update your software, Windows and third-party programs, if they are involving a security update. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, the next best practice on the list is really more of a personal preference, but if you use the same computer for work and personal use, you might want to consider actually creating separate accounts on your PC to do separate things. For example, if you are sitting there working all day on your personal machine, you might get distracted from incoming emails or things like that that aren't related to your work. And also, if you mix your personal files with your business files, sometimes it can be hard to locate the file that you might need. So if you actually create a separate account, and you can just even switch from one to the other without having to log off or turn off your computer, it might make things a little more efficient for you. And if you remember earlier, I was talking about how sometimes you just end up with 80,000 files everywhere. Well, maybe a third of those are not related to what you're doing when you're sitting down at the computer. It all kinds of goes back to keeping organized, but also makes you a little more efficient. And also, if you have kids in the house, you want to set up a separate profile for them so that when the kids get on the computer, they don't affect anything that you do, whether it's personal or work. Now, if you recall earlier, to do this, you would go under your settings and then go to accounts. Now, if you followed my earlier advice of changing your standard account to a local account, you're not going to have that family and other users option over here. But we can get to it a different way. You want to close that, and in your search bar, just type Control Panel, and then go to User Accounts. And then you want to click on Change Account Type. And when you do that, you're going to get that administrator prompt that we talked about earlier. Go ahead and type that in, and now it will give you administrator options in accounts. So at this point, now you have permissions to change any account. So you can click here to add a new account, sign in without a Microsoft account, create a local account, and here again, you can choose kids, work, personal, couple, whatever you want to call it. But this way, you will be able to log in to a different account anytime you want to help keep your stuff separated. And then all you have to do is hit Control-Alt-Delete and switch user, and then you can just simply go from one account right back to the other. So you can see, again, it's an optional setting. It doesn't affect user privacy or anything like that. It's just a really good way to help you keep your work and personal life separate, and also give the kids a safe place to get online without them possibly digging through your personal stuff. Totally optional, but I think it's a good idea for most people. As an added bonus, if for some reason there's a issue with a specific profile, you can log into another profile, and if that problem doesn't persist inside that profile, then you know it's a problem with your profile. If the problem persists across all profiles, now you know you might have a Windows problem. And that's just a good way to help troubleshoot so you know what direction to go. Now, the next best practice is one that's near and dear to my heart, and it causes a lot of controversy, and I still haven't figured out why. But it's Windows System Restore. Your computer, when you first set up Windows, does not have System Restore enabled. Now, it is true that it doesn't always work, but a lot of times it actually does, and I have fixed a lot of computers just by simply restoring them back to a previous date. So what I would recommend for a best practice is to first enable System Restore, and then also make sure you have enough space allocated to allow multiple restore points. Because if for some reason your computer doesn't boot, System Restore is the first thing I would tell you to do, and a lot of times that's all you need to get back up and running. So let me show you how to do it. Now, I normally have my System Restore enabled, but for purposes of this, I disabled it so you can see what most people see if you have a new computer and you've never touched System Restore. In your search bar, you can type in RSTRUI and click on that command here, or you can just type System Restore and then click on Create a Restore Point. Okay, so if you don't have System Restore enabled, you're going to get this window up here. And you're going to want to scroll down until you find your C drive. Now, the C drive right here, where you see where it says Protection is off. If you click Configure, click Turn on System Protection, and I usually set my restore volume to about 10% of my drive. Depends on the size of your drive. You can go up or down. Usually 5 or 10% is plenty. You click apply and then click OK. As you can see, it's turned on now. Now you can click create. And at this point, you can just type in whatever you want. Just give it a friendly label. Like you can say 100% working after Windows update, or software, whatever software installed, whatever you want to do. Just click create. And it's going to take a second, and it's going to go through and create a restore point for you. Now, once that restore point is created, you'll get a notification that it was created successfully. You can click close. And then if you click on the system restore just above that, this is what you would normally see when you typed in that RST-RUI in your start menu. You click next, and you can see right here, there is my restore point that I just created. Now, over time, you'll get more and more restore points, and you can delete those as needed, but these are really beneficial. Now, again, this is one of those issues where people just either love it or hate it. I don't understand why people would purposefully turn it off, because if there's a chance it might fix your computer, why wouldn't you? It only takes a couple seconds, and I have no idea why Microsoft has disabled this feature on new computers. It also doesn't make any sense to me. I did a video about System Restore and went a lot more in depth about it and explained exactly how it works, how to use it if you need it, things like that. I'll put a link in the description. You can check that out, or card above. So the next thing on the list is something that I made a video about a while back, and I got a lot of flack for it, and you guys were right. It's Windows User Account Control. Now, Windows User Account Control is actually a Windows utility that helps monitor how much stuff can run on your computer without your intervention. And because I've been doing this so long out of habit, I always disable mine completely because I generally know what I'm doing. But for your average novice user, they might want to be notified anytime something is trying to be changed on their system. So I have gone and re-enabled user account control, but I'm going to show you how to adjust the settings according to your needs. So what you're going to want to do is just go to your search bar and type UAC, and then click on change user account control settings. Now again, I've set mine back to what I used to have it as, which was never notify. That's really not a good idea, even for those of us who are experienced. What you ideally want to do is set it all the way up here to always notify you. Again, that is going to probably be annoying, and you're probably going to get more pop-ups than you're used to, but that's going to be the safest way to go. Click OK and you're done. Now the next one on my list is pretty simple, and it is to simply remove any programs that you have installed that either you don't use anymore or that you don't know what they are. Sometimes when we're looking for software and we're looking for something specific, and we try 1 or 2 or 3 different 4 programs or whatever until we find one that we like, and then we start using that one, but we forget to remove those other 3. Now generally, if the programs are safe, it's not a big deal, but why have them installed if you're not going to use them, and it takes up more space on your hard drive? So let me show you how to check that. So what you're going to do is just click on your start button, and then go to your settings, and then click on apps. Now this will show you all the installed programs on your computer. Usually the best way to do this is I sort first by install date, and that shows me the most recent programs that have been installed on my computer. This is where I always also look when someone says their computer's suddenly not acting right. A lot of times it's because of something recently installed. So this would be a good way to find what might have gotten on your computer and you didn't even know about it. If you want to look for older programs, just scroll all the way down the bottom of the list, and this will show you the programs that have been on the computer the longest, and then you can decide if you need any of these programs. If you're not sure what they are, then remove them. Once you do that, you've cleared up some storage space and you have a little more peace of mind. Now the next item on the list is right in line with what we just talked about, which is unknown software. Now there's plenty of legitimate software out there on the internet, and there's plenty of places to find it. What I would always recommend when you're looking for software is to go directly to the manufacturer's website. Now there will be certain situations where an older version of some software is what you need. I'll give you an example of that. There's a program that I recommend for cloning called Macrium Reflect. So if you wanted to get the latest version of Macrium, you can go on their website and download it, but then you have to pay for it. However, there are older versions of this program that still work perfectly. So in those situations, you would want to go and research and find out where exactly you can safely go download that. And there a lot of times I'll make a video like that where I will tell people, go here, for example, Major Geeks, bleepingcomputer.com. These are some of the places that you can download trusted software. And if you're not sure, it's always best to go directly to the vendor. For example, Adobe Acrobat. If you just click Adobe Acrobat, there's going to be a billion links on where you can download it, and a majority of those possibly have malware or spyware attached to it. But if you go directly to the Adobe website, you can guarantee you get a free, clean version. So just be careful of where you download software from, and if you don't know exactly what you're doing, always go directly to the vendor. So the last items on the list have to do with internet and wireless security in your home. A lot of people don't even realize it, but when they get their brand new router set up in their house, it comes with a default username and password, and a lot of times people don't change it, and a lot of routers don't make you change it. When I talk about default username and password, I'm not talking about to access your wireless network. I'm talking about the default username and password to actually log into your router that comes with your internet service. That's two totally different things. In my case, the default username and password is admin and password, but I since changed that. Now every router setting is different, so I'm just showing you mine, but you're going to be looking for something along the lines of change admin password. And you can just click here, and whatever the username and password that is probably on a sticker on the side of your device, change it right here. Now another neat feature that you can do inside your router to ensure even further security is to hide your SSID, or the name that you broadcast to. So if you've ever looked at wireless settings to see which wireless names are available, if you uncheck a box like this or check a box that says hide SSID, nobody, when they're looking for wireless signals, will even see that your network exists. You have to manually go enter it, but if people can't see it, then there's no way that they can hack into it. That's another feature that I would recommend you turn off, because if you can't see it, you're going to be safer. Now another great feature that you can use, and this is really more if you have maybe people connecting to your wireless and you can't figure out how they're getting on or whatever, but there is a thing called MAC address filtering. And in just about any modern router, you can go into here and put in a device name and then the machine's MAC address. Now every device, whether it's a cell phone, a laptop computer, anything that connects to a wireless network has a MAC address. Once you have the machine's address, you can go in here and enter it manually and then add it. And then basically what you're doing is you're telling the router to only allow those devices with a specific MAC address to access your wireless network. So I'm not going to get into the whole MAC address filtering and how to do all that, because it is a little complicated for a lot of people. That really deserves its own video, and I'll probably make one in the future showing you exactly how to configure MAC address filtering for pretty much any router. But if you have that enabled, it's going to keep people off your network that shouldn't be on it. So that's the list of my personal favorite best practices for Windows and PCs in general. And I sincerely hope that you actually got some benefit out of it and maybe learned something new. And if you have an idea for a best practice that I didn't include, make sure you leave it down in the comments below and we'll address it in a future video. And if you have any questions about anything I said in the video, please also leave me a comment as well. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.